Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Film Seizure. My name is Jeff Arbuckle. With me, as always, are my compatriots, my brothers in arms, Chuck Moore.
Hey, how are you?
Doing all right. How are you doing, Chuck?
I'm doing good.
Good. Jason Oliver. Jason, how's it going?
I'm doing well, Clarice.
Right off the bat.
Right off the bat. All right, so
I gotta take my shoes off. My lambs are screaming. Right
now. That's a different direction.
Yeah,
never going. So before we get started, I do want to do something. We've never really done this before, and I don't know if we've ever had an instance where we've had to do something like this before. But I did kind of want to issue a little bit of a content warning. The movie we're going to talk about this week is The Silence of the Lambs. It is, I think all three of us agree, this is a very, very good movie. And for me, it is one of my favorite movies of all time. However, there are topics within this, especially as it pertains to the LGBTQ community, that might be quite sensitive to some people. It deals with the villain of our movie. Well,
of the villains,
the main villain, no, but the person that's on that our heroine is on the chase of is a member of that community. And it has become something that over the last few years has become very derisive I don't even want to say derisive, but it has become sensitive to the community because of something that often happens in these types of situations where some people might look at this and think of trans folks or other folks in the community as being a monolith. If you don't like this movie because it is something that bothers you because of that portrayal of the villain or of what are some of the motivations of our villain, that is perfectly understandable. You're absolutely in the right to do so. I think there are plenty of people also in the LGBTQ community who also see it as see it from a different light as well. We felt that there is a bunch of nuance that's baked into this, and I think there's nuance in how each one of us have probably viewed this movie over the years, and that's really where we're going to be kind of focusing on. If you have people in your circle that might not be a fan of this movie or that you might have concerns about with this movie, they are perfectly valid. Whatever community you're a part of, you're valid. And we are certainly allies on this show. And I just wanted to issue that because I think there might be some things that are talked about. There are certainly some older terms used in this movie that, we may end up using because we're maybe quoting what the characters are saying or what they are talking about. And we just want to make sure that people are aware of that. Sound good?
Well said.
Well said.
All right. So 1991's The Silence of the Lambs. Now, this is the second of the three Big Five winners of the Oscars. Mm-hmm. The Big Five are Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, and a Screenplay Award. One or the other. Although, interestingly, the other two, It Happened One Night and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, like with Silence of the Lambs, are adapted. So it is kind of interesting that there's been no original screenplay to win the Big Five. But anyway, this is a unique movie in that regard. It's also the first Best Picture winner that was released on VHS before the Academy Awards, which is also very unusual. Not anymore, of course, but quite unusual back then.
Well, nothing's released on VHS anymore, so
right. It would be quite unusual today if Everything Everywhere All at Once got a VHS release. But this was an early year movie, released by Orion Pictures, which was in horrific, dire straits as a company. In fact, within 12 months of this release, they are all but dead as a company.
Right.
And it's also the second consecutive Best Picture winner from Orion. Dances with Wolves was also Orion.
Some
and
poor
those are
management there.
something. Well, it's weird because I went through like some of their movies, just kind of looking at, it's like, where did things go wrong? And basically outside of, because Dances with Wolves made almost $430 million worldwide. This made almost $275 million worldwide. And I think Platoon Addams Family was their third one, which they had to get co-produced with Paramount to get out. So, and those movies were big hits. Platoon was a big hit, but so many other of their movies just tanked, absolutely tanked. I think Jason's looking at it right now.
It doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't make any sense. Like everything I'm clicking on around this time. Yeah, I mean, they had some flops, but they weren't like catastrophic.
There are some though that you'll find where it's like, oh, it cost them $10 million to make and it made $150,000 or something.
I mean, even bullshit like Navy SEALs broke even.
Right. But I mean, like, also keep in mind though, when you were double all of the budgets, but for movies like Platoon, Dances with Wolves, and this one, Silence of the Lambs, they also had promotional Oscar budgets too.
Yeah,
so they would end up almost tripling there.
Even
they don't put
like
that
RoboCop
into the
2.
No,
even something like RoboCop 2, which had a budget somewhere probably at the ceiling of $30 million, only made 45.5. So it probably did lose money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's kind of an interesting story about Orion because they made good movies, and I remember they had a lot of movies that I wanted to see as a kid. You know, and they were also they were always the company that was putting stuff out on VHS that was cheap to buy. Like, there was always like the section of the video store of media play or whatever, where it was like, buy these movies for under $7 or whatever. They're all Orion movies.
Right.
Because they had a lot of hits, but then they also had a lot of movies that played well on VHS, and whoever ended up, I think it was MGM who ended up buying their catalog, could just crank them out cheap. So.
Yeah, it would be interesting to really read about more of their rise and fall because, man, they had some big hits like The Terminator, Return of the Living Dead, FX, the first one was a huge hit.
Well, even the second one was a modest hit, even though it was...
Hoosiers was a massive hit. Three Amigos, Platoon. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like you can kind of see it start to go wrong when their budget starts to get bigger.
Well, and also they started expanding how many movies. It's the same thing with Canon.
Yeah.
They were a small company who had a few hits, and then they busted out with a whole bunch of movies.
And Ryan's belt couldn't hold the pants up.
In 1987, they released 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 movies in 87.
Yeah, so we're talking, and a
lot of them were good, but
right, we're talking, those are Canon Films types of numbers of movies being released. And if you think that on average in 87, the budget was someplace between maybe 12 and 15 million on average.
Yeah.
So every movie on average then has to hit 30 million.
But they were hitting some massive hits, even like in the late 80s, massive hits.
But
huge hits.
Yeah, but how much are they in debt for other things too? So it's like, so that's, yeah. But anyway.
UHF didn't do them any favors.
No, it didn't. It really didn't. But again, another Orion movie I wanted to see as a kid.
Prancer. We talked about Prancer last week.
Yep.
That made them money.
But anyway, enough of all those
Enough
movies.
of all of that.
So Silence of the Lambs is the second movie and second book, right, by Thomas Harris about Lecter?
Yes.
Red Dragon was the first book.
Right. And
Red Dragon had already been made into a movie.
Right. Manhunter. Mm-hmm. And this was just kind of mentioned to Jonathan Demme. It's like, he had done something, he had made something that Orion was a part of. and they were like, "Hey, Jonathan, we think you might like this book that you might want to check out."
Right.
It was this. Ted Talley wrote the screenplay, and it is known as being one of the most accurately adapted films ever. It's real close.
I don't remember a lot of changes from when I read the book originally 30 years ago.
There are a couple of major ones that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Like one of them is, and this is the number one thing that I will always talk about on a technical level with this movie that I just love. But in the book, you have all of Clarice's thoughts about being the only woman in the room and how people look at her.
I mean, I don't consider that a major change from the book, though.
No, but you don't hear those. What you see instead are those real close in shots of people looking at her and staring her down, basically staring us down because we're kind of in her spot.
They do the male oppression very well in this.
Yes, and so they do it silently, where you don't have to necessarily hear her thoughts, but we're shown that, and when the camera's turned back to her, if something is said, you see her very, very. It's not very obvious, but you can see her gears turning a little bit as she's thinking about something that's being said. Like at one point, Jack Crawford has to usher a cop out of a room to talk about the details of a crime so that they don't talk about it in front of a woman. And when she confronts him about it, it's like, without saying much, all she says is it does matter.
Well,
and you see her dealing with that.
You're getting to me to one of like the most important themes of the whole fucking movie is that moment.
Right.
I mean, you just jumped right into it because to me, I think that is like one of the biggest moments that matter in this movie.
Right.
Especially today. Like as this movie has aged, that I think it was so ahead of its time.
It is a quite feminist movie.
Yes. I mean, the imagery alone, especially in the opening scene with the title sequence, when she gets into the elevator with all of the beefy, white FBI trainees in their red shirts.
They all look at her.
They all look at her, and she is diminutive. She is
yes.
She is so much smaller than all of them, and that is a perfect example of putting kind of the audience, like you, in her shoes.
Well, there's actually one thing done before that. What's the first thing you see her do? She's climbing uphill.
Well, yeah. She's
literally, traveling or trudging uphill in that whole thing, which there was
alone. That's
too.
what matters in the scene, because every cadet at that university does this. They don't all do it alone.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So she's working extra hard. There are a lot of scenes with her roommate where, they're puzzling through clues, or they're talking about things that they learned in class and how it could apply here. She's doing the work, and it's so subtle, but also very in your face that this is getting done. And she's the person who's going to break the case.
Since you've already brought it up, the scene where Jack uses her, like, he knows what he's doing. He uses her to
she's a honeypot
to ingratiate himself with the local authority.
Yeah,
but it's also kind of like, when you really break that down, it's kind of like, well, why did you bring her in the first place? That's what I would be thinking on the other side of that equation. It's like, well, why'd you bring her in the first place if you can't talk about this in front of her, right? And that confrontation she has with him, where he's like, well, this is what I'm doing. It wasn't nothing personal, but it's like, but you set the tone.
Yeah.
And it's correct. And it's correct in two ways, because I don't believe that they necessarily respected him because of the way he treated her as well, right?
Yeah, there could be a little bit like, why? Yeah, like.
But if he had just come in with confidence with her, it's like, you could speak freely in front of her, that sets the tone that she would have preferred, and that would have honestly probably been more effective.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he'd already done this once with her, at least that we know of, by sending her in the first place to see Hannibal Lecter.
Well, a lamb to the slaughter in a way, right?
Lamb to the slaughter.
Yeah.
Like, even the guy, Dr. Chilton.
Oh, God,
says
he is so fucking smarmy.
He's
He
as
is
scary.
gross.
He's as scary as Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah.
He is. He's a gross dude.
Most definitely.
Yeah, he's as scary as Hannibal
Most
Lecter in a
definitely.
different way. But yeah,
Well,
he wouldn't eat you physically, but he would eat you.
He's eating you alive,
Yeah.
and he's going to use you for his own benefit. He is the embodiment of the misogynistic institution, right?
Right. He's the embodiment for sure. Crawford is like a little lesser in that regard. But yeah,
Well,
I mean, even Chilton says
he's the ally who's not really living up to that status.
He's also like Crawford is also manipulative in his own way.
a lot of ways. Like Chilton says it out loud. Boy, are you ever to his taste.
Yeah.
Crawford knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's sending someone without info to Hannibal Lecter to try to appeal to him in a way he didn't expect.
Well, she's a pawn.
Yeah, she's definitely a pawn.
Yeah, she's a pawn in their game because they are intellectual equals in a way.
A pawn is a piece you can easily get rid of.
Yep.
Right? Like if we're talking about chess, exactly. Like I make this move and if I lose this piece, it's okay. I still have my rooks, my knights.
And what did I learn?
Yeah.
It's and yet she always is commanding the space that she's in.
Not always, but mostly.
Not always.
Well, not always, but
and you wouldn't expect her to.
No,
right?
she's really smart, and she's dealing with, like, when she gets to Lecter, like a man of like really high intellect.
Yeah.
And she can stand up to him for the most part. He gets the best of her
The first time. Yeah.
a couple times, I'd say.
A few times, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, she's really we don't know how old she is. I don't think she's probably early 20s.
I would say
mid-20s.
she's mid 20s, like graduate level.
Yeah, she had finished UVA because she said that I graduated UVA. That's not exactly a charm school.
But this is her first assignment.
Right. She's still in the
hasn't even
FBI.
graduated yet.
She's still in Quantico.
She's a Quantico. Right. Yeah.
So she is
Usually-
this is her
usually,
criminology masters, essentially.
I'm not like for sure, but you probably like graduating Quantico is kind of like the equivalent of getting a master's.
Yeah.
Or you've achieved a master's and now you're becoming a cadet. So she's probably like
she was also
24,
She probably had to have
25,
some
26.
degree
Right.
before she
She's
got
mid
there.
20s would be my
Right.
guess. Yeah.
And I mean, because she was definitely a student at once upon a time of Jack Crawford's,
Yes.
who she does not expect him to remember her, but he brings it up.
Yeah, she's probably an undergrad.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Probably one of like hundreds of people that he's seen in his life, you know. So basically this movie, I mean, really kind of jumps right in, right? We know that Buffalo Bill is a mass murderer and that Jack Crawford is the person who is leading the charge to try to capture him. And Jack Crawford's the head of the behavioral science side of FBI.
Yeah.
And he thinks that Hannibal Lecter has valuable information to help capture Buffalo Bill. And because they don't even, I mean, they have very little about Buffalo Bill except for the calling cards. There's flayed skin. That's about it.
Right.
And it's never the same. It doesn't seem to be the same thing that's flayed.
Right.
Like it's a left arm on one person, it's a right arm on another. It's, yeah. And they have found, I believe, 4 bodies at this point.
Yeah, I think the fourth.
Well,
wait, no, there is 5.
There's 5 because it's Bill Skin's 5th.
That's right. That's the headline. It's the 6th that they find later.
Yes.
But it's out of order, which complicates some of this.
Right.
It complicates it, but it's also the reason that
that they find him. Yeah, because Hannibal asks a simple question of Clarice in the notes.
Yeah.
So and so like basically he's like, look, Lecter's got information. What I'm
doing
going
the
to send you.
Mindhunter thing. They're on the
Right.
front end of profiling serial killers.
Yep.
Yeah.
To try to, the Mindhunter thing.
We should bring up the fact that the famous profiler John Douglas is the inspiration for the Jack Crawford character.
And he's the main character in Mindhunter, right?
He is not him, but he's a proxy.
Yeah.
Yeah. The character in Mindhunter is a proxy for him.
Yeah.
It should also be mentioned that most science has completely debunked the profiling in general.
Yeah.
That it's just kind of horseshit.
We know now it doesn't work the way we thought it did.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like profiling, like in that way, this movie is dated, but it is still like this time capsule of how people thought in the early 90s.
And it's not necessarily... I wouldn't go so far as to say it's illogical.
I also agree. You weren't going to go quite where I thought you were, but I would also go as far as to say that this movie is not really a profiling movie.
No.
They use a little bit of it. There's one scene between Jack and Clarice where they profile.
Yes.
He kind of tests her.
Yeah, she's
right?
like he knows the people.
Right. But most of it is them trying to get information out of Hannibal, who is this a superior intellect.
Yes.
Like he is on another fucking plane of intellect.
Well, because he's given anagrams.
Yeah.
He also
has a connection in a way to the killer as well.
He does. It is accidental.
Yes.
Which is one of the things that I think when I was younger, I didn't realize how absolutely accidental the connection is. I always looked past the fact that Buffalo Bill's lover was the patient.
Yeah.
I never thought that.
Yeah.
And it didn't always hit me the same way that, when she finds the head of that guy, it's Lecter who's protecting it.
Yeah.
And takes it.
Yeah.
Which is almost as if he's curious and kind of wants to mentor Buffalo Bill.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, most definitely.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's kind of stuff that the show got into.
Yes.
That show kind of devolved as it went along.
Are you talking about Hannibal?
Hannibal
Yeah.
show.
Okay.
But the first
two
season and a half to 2 seasons were really good, and it really got into that. Like, because it takes place in the time where Hannibal is a working psychologist, right? Or psychiatrist.
It's Mindhunter, Red Dragon era, like
It's pre Red Dragon, right? But it's also post all that Hannibal.
Kind of pre Red Dragon, but the main character Will is the main character from my.
But the main character. Yeah, it's kind of leading up to the events of Red Dragon.
Yes,
right.
Yeah,
yeah.
But Hannibal is in Jack and Will's life as a consultant, right? And they don't know what he really is yet. It's fascinating, and Hannibal's already playing chess with them.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. No, I never watched Hannibal. I remember watching. I watched the Hannibal movie.
Yeah, the sequel.
And I saw Red Dragon. Did they actually make a movie of Hannibal Rising?
Yes.
They did?
And actually, I didn't hate it. I liked it better than Red Dragon and Hannibal.
For me, it's Mindhunter, Silence of the Lambs, and...
Or you mean Manhunter?
Manhunter?
Yes.
Mindhunter.
Mindhunter is,
Manhunter and Silence of the Lambs are so different in like their approach and their tone that I kind of give them like equal status. It's like
I can see that.
it's like a mood thing for me.
Yeah.
I mean, Manhunter is so 80s. like it Silence of the Lambs almost feels kind of timeless outside of a few things.
Right. Manhunter is way less psychological.
Yeah.
Too, as I remember. It's been a little while.
Well, Manhunter is more like
emotional.
I gotta get into the mind of the killer. Will Graham, he's got to become the killer. It's very much like that profiling thing,
which is what they do in Hannibal. They do that in the show.
It's what
Hannibal.
He breaks his mind, right?
Yeah.
And because he has to think like the killer, he becomes like the killer, right? Which is kind of hokey.
But for people, you've never seen it. You don't know that story. So Will Graham captures Hannibal Lecter. That's why he is...
Well, that's in Red Dragon, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess you've seen Red Dragon then. I didn't...
Yeah, because Will Graham and that was Ed Norton, right?
Ed Norton, yes. I don't like that
because Manhunter doesn't really tell the whole story of the Red Dragon. It just tells, like, the post-capture, right?
Yes.
Whereas Red Dragon, the movie Red Dragon with Ed Norton, tells the full story.
I don't remember much about Red Dragon. I mean, I was one that's like, it's fine, but it's like, it's no Silence of the Lambs.
No.
I mean, the thing I remember most is there's the guy on fire in the wheelchair.
Well, that's the great scene in Manhunter.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great scene in Manhunter with him coming down this spiral, like, parking.
Yeah.
Ramp. Yeah.
It's interesting the way that they've moved around the story to different movies.
Yeah.
In the universe.
And then you got the TV show, which kind of jumbles it all up too.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's,
I mean, I would have no qualms with anyone saying this is the crown jewel of it all. Like what we're talking about, Silence of the Lambs, like truly,
it is.
In my
opinion,
it's the best.
Yeah.
The best crafted. But I do have like this love in my heart for Manhunter.
Me too.
I think I've seen that, but it's been
I'm gonna
decades.
picture it again, but in a Gata Vedita.
In a Gata Vedita, baby.
Like that's kind of like the Q Lazarus of that movie, right?
Yeah.
The score is just so 80s and great to Manhunter, but it is very dated.
Yeah.
This movie stays very relevant. It really does.
Yeah, it kind of does, because it is interesting that it does, because, like, yes, I mean, barring a few of the like, today there would probably be more people in Clarice's situation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she wouldn't get into an elevator with only guys. There would be a couple of other ladies in there, I'm sure.
But that stuff doesn't bother me.
That doesn't bother me.
Because that's trying to hammer a theme.
Well, it's setting the stage for what she has to be against.
It's conditioning the audience.
Right.
I don't have a problem with any of that.
Right.
Like, that's just artistic license.
Absolutely.
Like, this is like, I have something to say, and this is how I'm going to show it.
And it would cheapen her battle.
Right.
Yeah.
If she was in a world full of women, too. Like, what?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
Like, I have no idea what that CBS Clarice show was. I didn't have any fucking interest
I tried. It was not good. Yeah.
Because it's like, I would rather that everybody had the same rights to be able to tell whatever they wanted to from that. And it's like, oh no, it's,
Well, that's a good point. We should bring it up because there are some weird fucking rights issues around the use of Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah.
So Hannibal Lecter is and may still be owned by the De Laurentiis company. Because that's Dino De Laurentiis bought the rights to the character when he bought the rights to Red Dragon.
Yeah.
When he made Manhunter. So he still owned the rights. He lent them to, who put this out? Orion to make Silence of the Lambs. But he still retained full rights to the use of the Hannibal Lecter character. So now, fast forward all these years, whereas, the TV show Hannibal was able to secure the rights to Hannibal Lecter, but the TV show Clarice, Starling, or whatever it's called, was not. So now you have a situation where you have these two shows take place in the same universe, but the Clarice Starling show is not able to talk about Hannibal Lecter.
Which is wild.
And that's why it failed.
Right, yeah, because
that's
it's like, failed.
Yeah.
I mean, like, regardless, it's how she makes her chops.
Yeah.
So if you can't talk, it's like, so if I'm not mistaken, didn't they always kind of allude to it, but they can't talk about it?
Yeah, they danced around it a lot.
Oh my God.
And that just made it feel even worse.
Right.
It's like fucking Creed 3 dancing around Rocky.
Right.
Like, it can still be good, but you kind of need to acknowledge the thing.
Yeah. Like, because it's like, Right. I mean, it would be like, well, we can tell a Pat Garrett story, but we can't talk about Billy the Kid.
It's bullshit. Yeah, exactly. Why
We have
bother?
William the Guy over here.
Why
I gotta
bother?
chase it.
Why bother
William the
at that
Guy, Billy the Could.
Billy
Like Creed 3 is
Kid.
not the best example because that's a property that has kind of been able to now get to the point where it can
beyond
stand
it.
on its own.
Can it stand on its Stallone?
It's on its Stallone. It can stand on its Stallone. That's
right on his neck.
But you can't make a Clarice Starling show without mentioning Hannibal Lecter. That is ludicrous.
No,
Why-
because
why try?
well, no, not why. I'm not answering your question.
Yeah, I know.
Hannibal's the icon,
Right.
right? I mean, he is the icon.
He is the main character of the entire
But they're
universe.
so intrinsically tied.
Right.
But you could have Hannibal without Clarice. That's been proven.
You can.
You can't have Clarice without
Because you-
Hannibal.
But you
Right.
could,
Like,
but you couldn't
have
do,
a Will Graham story
but
without.
you couldn't do
We've had a few.
but you couldn't do new Hannibal stories without Clarice, right? If you're talking about a timeline, right?
Oh, if we're talking about a new story
Yeah.
now, yeah, Clarice would at least
She would
have to be mentioned.
Right.
Yeah. But there's not rights issues with Clarice.
But
so.
Clarice is so intrinsically tied to this story, this Silence of the Lambs story, that I mean, yeah, it's like, wow, you really think you can do this
Right. I mean, like the only way you could.
without Hannibal Lecter?
Why don't we talk about Silence of the
I-
Yeah,
know.
let's do that.
There's so many properties, though. Like, I think we did it
Yeah,
justice.
we covered.
I think we did
Let's
the
move
justice.
ahead
yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back to what we were saying. It's like, the whole idea of conditioning the audience with, with that imagery of
The
her
male-dominated.
being- the world that she has to navigate and being not the one who's typically going to have the power or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, again, the same way that you would condition the audience reading a book by giving her inner voice.
Yes.
So,
Absolutely.
right. So
Absolutely.
being able to translate that, and it's so important to this movie
Yeah.
that they didn't even nominate it for best cinematography, just for the close-ups, for the balls to just say, you're gonna talk straight into camera, and that's going to portray somebody's inner thoughts.
See, to me, though, that's not cinematography. That's a director.
Well, sure.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I guess
that's a director's choice. And it well deserved.
right.
Jonathan Demme. Jonathan Demme.
Yeah.
You're doing good.
Am I doing okay?
You're doing real good.
Well deserved. I mean, the choices he makes. Even the story with him and Q Lazarus, like discovering her in like a taxi cab or something. She was
Discovering who?
Q Lazarus.
Which character is she?
No,
I'm sorry.
the singer of the Buffalo Bill song.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The Wild Horses song.
Yeah.
What the hell? What's the name of the song?
I don't even know.
I don't know.
Tell us the story.
Yeah, tell us the story.
The story.
Let's-
Well, from what I remember, it's been a little bit since I've read about it, but he got a demo tape from her. She was driving a cab, and he got a demo tape from her, and
Goodbye Horses.
Goodbye Horses was on the demo tape, and he heard it, and he loved it, and when he made this movie, he put it in the movie.
Nabbed her. Yeah.
It's
And,
kind of
and
funny
she
because
and she didn't really ever have like a career, like, and apparently she made like a bunch of albums that were never really published. And she's passed away now. She just died a couple years ago, but she's like,
I
this
think
really-
I remember that
she's
story.
this really interesting, like, enigmatic character that had this
Enigmatic?
enigma.
I thought it was enigmatic.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe it is. Enigmatic character that has this sort of amazing presence in this iconic movie, in this iconic moment.
Well, she does have one more.
I remember
in
that
Philadelphia.
story,
She covered the Talking Head song "Heaven."
But
Did Demme do?
Yeah.
Which is interesting because he
Oh, he-
also directed "Stop Making Sense," which is one of the best music docs ever.
he
also made one
Or
of the best-
concert films, I
He
guess.
also made one of the best women in prison flicks too. He had to talk Roger Corman into doing it because he's like, "That's passe.
yeah.
Yeah, so he talked him into it, and it's
But he was her one and only champion.
That's pretty Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she got a little bit of publicity and money off of it, but as far as I know, she was still like driving a cab when she died.
Wow.
I mean, she didn't. I mean, it's wild to think about that, right?
Yeah.
And it is when people think of this movie, one of Jeff's favorite movies, it is the most famous scene, other than maybe the Chianti, Lecter scene.
Yeah, I mean the Chianti Lecter scene is the one that everyone will.
That's the one that they quote.
Lampoon or whatever the word is.
What's funny is that song, for some reason, I always think that's a Depeche Mode song.
Well, yeah, it kind of sounds like
it's like it's like, oh, this is the scene where the Depeche Mode song. It's like, wait, that's not Depeche Mode.
No, not at all. Cue Lazarus, fascinating, just fascinating blip in pop culture.
Yeah, that's
and it's all Jonathan Demme from the standpoint of he discovered it, right? So he found this thing that was so perfect for this movie that became this iconic moment. And it all lends to him just like feeling this movie, right?
Yeah.
Like, so going back to that Best Director award, yeah. I mean, he owned it.
Oh yeah. I mean, this is it's
like he curated this movie down to the T.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, speaking of Roger Corman, his old boss,
right,
is the head of the FBI in this movie.
Yeah.
And he's there, and you'd miss him if you didn't know it was him, because he's not talking in his typical way.
Yeah.
He's like angry.
Yeah. Definitely.
So it's like, that's awesome. Also, did you know who one of the cops was in was it Nashville or Memphis where they have
Chris Isaac?
No. I'm talking about somebody.
SWAT.
Oh, I know.
SWAT. Yeah.
The guy coming in with the radio when they discover that Clarice is talking to Hannibal Lecter. Kind of tall guy, kind of moppish hair. He walks in he keeps bringing the
George Michael.
Well, it is a George.
I don't know who it is.
It's Romero. George Romero.
Oh, I knew he was in there somewhere. I missed him.
Because it was filmed in Pittsburgh.
I missed him. Yeah, I knew he was in there somewhere, and I was actually looking for him. I didn't see him. Yeah.
Yeah, he has no lines. He comes in with the other cops that eventually get it bad.
Yeah.
And they're the ones who take Clarice away, who she fights back to get the notes from Hannibal. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that movie was shot in like the Pittsburgh, Morgantown area.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like all of his old pals from his exploitation days.
Yeah.
And also some of that exploitation stuff does serve him well. I mean, we talk about the scene.
Yeah.
The famous scene of Buffalo Bill presenting himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess we probably get into that.
Get into
Buffalo Bill as what his motivations are.
Who he is, what he is.
Yeah. Because
I think it's still kind of a little bit nebulous. Honestly.
I think it's much more nuanced because I never thought of him as, because because at first
it's enigmatic.
Right.
It's very enigmatic.
It's very enigmatic. It's so enigmatic, that word is enigmatic. But the thing is that he is Clarice first asks Hannibal Lecter, is he a transvestite?
Right.
He's like, no. And so they land on the concept of him being transsexual.
What? He even denies that.
Yes. But we're given the clues. And I don't think this is because she even says it's like, that's not normal. Trans people are passive. They're not violent people, which is 30 years later. Guess what, guys? It's true.
Still true. Yeah.
But there could be other things that are going on with a person that goes beyond gender or sex.
Right.
Because typically women aren't murderers, right? But sometimes they are.
Sometimes they are.
So what I see this as, because also, what's Buffalo Bill trying to do?
He's trying to make a skin suit.
Exactly. He's trying to live in somebody else's skin.
He's trying to transform.
Exactly. Yes. And that's why he's obsessed with moths.
Right.
and he's cocooning himself,
considering himself
to become
a
something
chrysalis.
else.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like Jonathan Demme is on record as talking about this. It's like Buffalo Bill is so uncomfortable with who he is. He wants to become as opposite of that as possible. He's not trying to become a woman because he feels like he's a woman and that's his true self.
Right.
He's trying to become a woman because he wants to become something opposite of who he is.
When did he say this?
Demme?
Yeah.
I don't know. I have to look it up. But
Was it in the last few years or a long time ago?
he's passed away now.
He
But
died in 2017, but I'm sure it was at some point. Probably. I mean, this movie gets talked about so often.
yeah, I don't know.
Right.
It probably
I was
could
just
have been.
curious.
I don't know the date on
so
that.
probably definitely prior to the last 6 years of
I
the
did commune with him.
I would.
and
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah.
I did commune with him the other night in a very special ceremony that I do for this movie. And yeah, he's like, "Leave me alone. I don't want to talk to you anymore." And I'm like, "Fair enough, sir."
Try their hardest to discredit
I
Yes.
think
that being a motivation.
I think so, too.
In my opinion,
Yes.
I think so too.
They even go not so far as to say, but the institution failed him.
Yes.
Absolutely, because
Two.
it was proven that he was so violent he cannot get a sex change.
Well,
Or
I think
reassignment is what he
I don't
says.
even know that it was the violence. It was the fact that
He had a
psychologically,
Yeah.
he may have tried and tried again,
Well,
but been denied because psychiatrists would have gotten to the real root of what his
I think
issues were.
wasn't it Hannibal himself
and
who
it-
says he was too violent for
maybe.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is they're expressing the fact that he's not an actual trans person. He's
Right.
he's not someone who's born male who has dysphoria.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, he has a different type of dysphoria, I think. But it's like a mental dysphoria that he has to play out being in something else's skin.
Right. I don't think
That's not the typical gender
I think
dysphoria.
he's dysphoric in the sense that he just needs to be out of his own body
Yeah.
into something else. And I think it's also like a I think it's also kind of a what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of a not a delusion, but him wanting to transcend, right? It's like a complex of like a resurrection,
Yeah.
right? Like almost like a messiah thing.
The butterfly. But I mean, the butterfly.
Right,
You go into the cave.
The butterfly
you come out.
is the perfect example, right?
Yes.
Like he wants that experience of becoming this thing that's ugly, or turning from this thing that's ugly, that's like repulsive and wormy, into something that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And he wants to play that out in any way he can, right? And for him, the way that he can do that is by transforming into a woman.
Yeah. But not by the typical measures.
No.
Well, because he can't.
Because he wants to physically like change skin
Yeah.
and all that. Like it's not a matter of just reassigning his gender. It's a matter of transforming completely his
Right.
skin, everything. Like a Cronenbergian transformation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were going to say something.
I honestly, I don't have a lot to say about this other than I think the movie does, for me, a fine enough job of trying to separate itself from making that statement
Yeah.
that trans people are violent or there's something wrong, or their mental state, whatever you want to say. For me, it does try to tell you that this is not what Bill is.
Well, when I saw this movie, when I was
I agree.
when I was 14 or 15 years old and I saw this movie for the first time, I was already aware that typically it was, typically people in the LGBTQ community or whatever it was called back then were not violent people.
Right.
And so it's like, even I was aware of that as a kid 30 years ago.
Right.
To the point where it's like, I've always saw Buffalo Bill as something different, more closer to something like Leatherface.
Right.
the way my brain could try to figure that out.
Agreed with
It's
that.
like that's a whole nother level of stuff going on inside that person's head that is not related to gender or sexuality.
But at the end of the day, too, it should be mentioned that Bill is a homosexual.
Yes, but that is also talked about in very straightforward terms.
I agree, and with nuance.
With nuance, and there's no judgment put on that.
No.
There was Hannibal talks about, it's like, I was his lover's doctor,
Right.
and then the lover came to me scared and worried that that this person was going to hurt them.
Right. Just like any number of straight people are fucking psychos, serial killers. Right. I mean, just because of your sexuality does not define your psychopathic tendencies.
Right. I mean, it's just that the greater number per capita will not typically turn out to be violent. But also, there's a large number of people who are not violent who have plenty of other issues going on inside their
and
head.
again, this like lends itself to the argument that profiling was bullshit.
Right.
Like, it's just...
But in some ways, not
it's playing
illogical.
numbers.
Even the movie...
Right, because you can find things that serial killers have in common.
Right.
And yeah, most of them are white males because, well...
A lot of people are white males.
A lot of people are white males.
Right.
That's why I would like the statistic.
And it's not a huge leap to know that men are more aggressive than women.
The statistic argument.
I mean, that's fucking way it is, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, you're an expert in profiling. Oh, Jesus Christ, I can make that same conclusion.
Well, this movie, if we're talking specifically about this movie, it does not in any way support the profiling.
No.
I agree. It doesn't.
People.
No, because in the end, it is a handful of things that Clarice discovers and is given to her.
It's a lucky accident, as
Pretty
you mentioned
lucky.
earlier,
Pretty
that
lucky.
they tried to profile somebody famous, and he happens to know something intimately about the situation.
Right. Happy accident.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, she, that's one other kind of major thing that I think is, that if I understand correctly, is in the book, that Jack Crawford more connects the dots about the patterns on the flayed skin looks more like a dressmaker.
I think that's accurate.
And then, but it's Clarice who remembers that and sees
When
it in the
she's in the
girl's
house.
right.
Yes.
And she's like, he's making a dress. He's making the skin suit. He's
Right.
And so,
Which is fine for the narrative of this film. For her
Absolutely.
to be the one that puts it together makes all the sense in the world.
leading up to that point, she's the one who's had the most
Exposure.
and the most forward movement on getting something finished with this. And when she's telling him what he's already like, yeah, we already found out who he was and they're going to the wrong place, which that's a whole nother topic. But like, he's
We have
almost,
to talk about that later because the
He
way
is
they
a
try to
little-
build tension, they undermine it in the filmmaking.
no, I don't know about that. I think we can talk about that. But what I was just saying was like, they're kind of dismissing her by just saying, so what, he's making a suit. We're already on our way and it's the wrong place anyway. But
I mean, if you think you know who he is, like, I
Sure.
don't think it's dismissive of Clarice. I think it's like, we already know Clarice. We're on it.
but they didn't know what his motives were.
You connect the dots still. Yes.
Right.
But we're not there yet.
We're not there yet. But anyway,
We're not there yet.
no, we're not there yet.
I was going to say I don't think they undermine the tension. They just cut it.
Well,
This is where it earned. I feel like that final,
okay.
final setup
They
is
shift
kind of how
the tension. They set it up and then they shift it.
Do you think when you're watching the movie, you're supposed to believe that the Clarice is at that, or that the detectives are at the right house? Do you think you're supposed to believe
Yes.
that?
Yeah.
because
They
again,
undermine it because when they're looking at the picture, and we already know Bill is the killer, the Crawford is holding a picture that's clearly not Bill.
No, Bill
No,
is
he's
an
not.
accident.
Yes, he is. He's
not.
Yes, he is. He's holding a picture saying, "Clarice, we know who he is."
I thought
It's this
I saw
guy's
the picture
name.
and it looked like Bill.
No, it's not. It's clearly not Bill.
No, it looked like Bill to me. So
It could be. Well,
It's whoever
because-
the guy is they think they're going after, whatever his name is. It's his picture.
James Gumb, who
Yeah.
is Bill.
yeah, they got the right guy.
They got the right
They just
guy.
have the wrong location.
They have the wrong picture then.
No, I don't.
I don't
it
think
may
so.
be. It may be different hairstyle or something. Because when we see Buffalo Bill, he's always long haired.
Yeah.
This may be a different.
I look like Bill to me.
They
look
had
like Ted Levine to me. I don't know.
They had everything right except for the location, because the location did belong to James Gunn.
Yeah,
but they were going. But again, Clarice realizing that he's got to know the people, at least early on. His first kills had to be somebody he's watched and saw and tried to, and took from knowing them. I mean, and then she just happened to go to the place that he is.
Right, because of his relationship to the victim
third girl
that they just found.
The third girl that was killed. Yeah.
Yeah, and the note from Lecter about
Also, she's the first one to realize that he planted trophies. The first technically technically Hannibal was the first to know.
The chrysalis.
But because it was in the head that he took and stored.
Right. Yes, that's correct.
But she was the first one of the law people to say that he's putting something in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, that I remember the first time I saw this movie, that scene worked beautifully for me.
It was nominated for best editing,
and then when she opened the door, when she knocked on the door and Bill opened, it's like a fucking gasp.
Yeah, because she's alone now, and this is not her training.
I know the first time I saw it, I believe that. This time, I didn't think that was Levine in the picture, and I'll have to go back and look later.
I'm pretty sure it is, but we can table it. Yeah.
Yeah. Can we go back and talk about the first scene with Clarice and Lecter? Because that is way over the top and fucking amazing.
It's one of my favorite horror scenes in period. Like it is unsettling on so many levels.
He immediately cuts to her and knows everything about her.
Well, he's just fucking standing there, ready for.
He constructs everything.
The first time you see it, yes, that is spooky. When she walks
breaks
up,
her down. He breaks her down.
It transitions past the wall between him and Miggs. Yeah. He's just standing still. Oh my god, that's chilling.
Yeah, because I'm sorry.
No, I'm
sorry. One moment.
Go ahead.
All the people in the other cells
are insane.
Right. They look like the danger.
Yeah.
Right. And you're seeing him like Miggs being overactive and you're like, oh, that guy's creepy as fuck. And
he's a different type of creepy.
Yes, right. And the juxtaposition when you see who we know is a lunatic, right? He's the devil. He's evil, right? Like he's described like Michael Myers. Yeah. Just fucking standing there.
And he's the only one behind glass.
Yes.
Only one behind glass.
Yes.
And let's face it, Anthony Hopkins is he looks like somebody who is educated. Like you see, granted, we know who Anthony Hopkins is. We have certain expectations when we see him.
I don't know if I knew he was.
But we do. A lot of people didn't. But this is the movie that made him.
Yeah, but I'm saying today we know what. But
I'm talking about first experience, though.
Well, sure, but yes, today I know who he is. But I'm still chilled by seeing him standing there waiting for her.
Well, there's
because he looks like an educated, well put together guy. He's not hopping around like a goddamn gorilla like Miggs is.
It's the coldness.
Yeah.
It's the stoic. It's the stoicism. Yeah. And when he says, "What did Miggs say to you?" There's this amazing moment where Clarice, she answers the question matter of fact.
She stands her ground.
And she says, "He said he could smell my cunt."
Yeah.
And then he replies something along the lines
I can't smell it.
Interesting. Well, I can't.
Yeah.
But he can smell things on her.
But then he tells her all the things he does smell and what that says about her, and he uses it against her. How she smells, he uses it against her.
Yeah.
And he breaks her down psychologically. And he strips her bare.
Yeah.
And it's fucking devastating.
What's amazing about this, we're talking about an FBI that wants to profile, right? And this man profiles Clarice Starling almost to a T. He gets one detail wrong, and I don't know if it's on purpose.
Right.
Because I think he belittles her father on purpose.
Yeah.
Right? to upset her, because he doesn't say he was a hero cop,
Right.
which he probably could tell.
That is something else in the book. Also, he wasn't a cop. He was a security guard, and he fucks up pumping his shotgun and he gets shot. He's not an actual hero cop.
Yeah, it works better in the movie.
It works better in the movie. Right. Absolutely. Because it gives us a little bit more understanding why she's doing what she's doing. And there's a little bit of, is it pathos that I'm thinking of, where it's like you kind of, you're kind of feeling it with her. That loss is important to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you feel uncomfortable for her, right? I mean, he's bullying her, but in this methodical way.
Yeah.
But he almost sounds caring in a weird. I don't know how to describe it.
He does let up on her by the end of the scene.
He's using his psychiatrist voice.
Yes.
You know, but seeing him in this environment behind this glass, there's a menace to it.
Oh yeah.
And
he definitely belongs there. You know, he belongs there.
So, like, as good as his performance is, though, hers is superb.
Well, she never looks like it's bothering. It doesn't look like it's bothering, but there is a break. There's a little crack.
There's a little razor cuts.
Yeah.
As the scene goes on, you see her start to crack. She never fully cracks, but you see
until she gets outside.
Right.
Yeah.
But she is like struggling by the end, and it's all there, and it's beautifully portrayed. Like, her performance in that scene alone is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She might be, these two might be two of the most deserving Oscar wins ever. Just maybe for these scenes like this.
The second one is the true, like, Silence of the Lambs scene. Like, that scene before he breaks out is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, her especially.
Yeah.
I don't think I know you're saying her especially.
She is almost allowing herself to be psychoanalyzed, right? Like, he is maybe helping her in that scene.
Yeah.
And it, like, to get past something, and it's rough.
Well, she's a different character after that.
Yeah.
I mean, as confident as she had been, she's nailing everything after that.
Yeah.
I mean, like, she's taken it upon herself to continue to go look at, because they're off the case at that point, but yet she still goes.
She's told to go.
Right. But she still is doing, like, she's going to the guy's house where the daughter was,
well, she has to show down with Buffalo Bill.
Well, sure. But
I mean, that is like a major emotional and physical moment. Like, you wonder, I know this is a lot of conjecture, and I don't want to, like, assign a male psychopathic's influence upon a strong female character's ability. But yeah, I think there is something to that. Like, has she been able to overcome this trauma to allow herself to fully actualize and be who she needs to be in that moment?
Well, I mean, there's a very literal representation of that. There is a lamb in the well, right?
Right. There is. Yeah. Yeah. That's fair. But, yeah, totally. I mean, absolutely.
But that lamb has just the mouth of a sailor.
Yeah, she does. Everyone acts exactly like they should in that scene. That's what I love.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
in every scene, everyone acts exactly like they should.
Like, this is...
Don't you fucking leave me.
You bitch.
Yeah, you fucking bitch. Don't you fucking leave me, bitch.
No, but but, like, Hannibal does take sympathy on her at the end of that first scene together, because when Miggs tosses his semen onto her,
so gross.
He calls her back, and he's like, he gives her the first piece. This is part of
his manipulation, though, too. You're saying sympathy, it's manipulation.
But he gives her something.
Right, because he needs her to come back. He needs to make a deal. Like, don't mistake anything this man does for...
but
there's nothing that he does that isn't for himself.
It's self-serving. It's all self-serving.
Sure, but there is at least a little bit of... He calls her back, and then he kills Miggs.
Well,
that night.
well, he does have a sense of decorum.
Yes,
He doesn't kill Miggs. He talks Miggs into killing himself.
Wow, but he kills him by right. But I mean, but like
It's Charles Manson.
Exactly.
But
he is the killer without the
What's
the
beautiful
weapon.
about that is that you've seen it. You've seen what he did to Clarice with just a few words, and how she broke down.
And she's strong-willed.
And she's a strong-willed person, sane person.
Yeah.
Apply that power to someone who's already broken mentally. I mean, it's like
And
the easiest
He
thing in the
swallowed
world.
his fucking tongue.
Yeah. Well, and then
And that's the power of Lecter, right?
Yeah.
That's what
And-
makes him so scary. That's what makes him a monster.
and what's kind of
Yeah. It's not the eating of people.
No.
that's-
No, it's the manipulation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the what's kind of funny though is how does Chilton deal with punishing him for it?
Takes his art away.
He takes his art away and he puts a fucking TV
Yeah. With a TV evangelist.
with a TV evangelist on, and it's like, dude, it's not going to do shit
No,
to this guy.
he doesn't
and
care.
it's so funny that he's like, oh, he thinks this is going to
Right.
be some sort of a punishment, know,
Right.
and it's like, dude, Chilton's gonna like fucking die of a heart attack someday, and Hannibal Lecter's still going to be in that cell.
No, he's
Chilton's
not.
gonna
Chilton's
die
gonna get
eaten.
at the end of the movie.
Yes, I know. Yes, of fucking course, I know. But the thing is Hannibal Lecter knows that he will always have the victory, regardless of how this plays out. Chilton's never going to have him, and he basically he embodies that too when Clarice comes back about the head, and it's like, yeah, this is this is what he thinks will be a suitable punishment or whatever. And
Right.
he's in control of that.
Yeah.
And he's always going to, he is going to linger on forever. And Chilton is just trying to use him for fame, essentially. Mm-hmm. And it's not working at all. I mean, it really doesn't work for him.
No, because Lecter never buys into it. He knows what he's doing. He knows he's...
Yeah. And at the end of the day, yeah, Chilton tells a story to the news that, yeah, I was the guy who kept Hannibal Lecter, like when he tries to make the deal with the senator and everything. Yeah. But that's, it doesn't, what does that do? It gives him an easier way to escape.
Yeah.
And yeah, he gets fucking eaten.
Dinner with an old friend.
I'm
having an old friend for dinner.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is fucking beautiful.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you for listening to Film Seizure.
We're going to eat each other now. I love that Tom Petty makes
of course.
a musical appearance in this.
Yes.
In this movie, but which is funny because that was right at the start of me like discovering Tom Petty.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this nice little, melding point between this movie and Tom Petty that will always.
So she's that girl, the Tom Petty girl, is the senator's daughter.
Yep, Brooke Smith,
which is real important for Hannibal Lecter more than anybody.
Yeah, I mean it is in a way it lights a fire, an extra fire under Crawford. It gives Chilton what he thinks is an opportunity, but
the only
Chilton
person doesn't
who's
have
really
any of his own good ideas. Like,
no, but he's trying to use it as an opportunity. That
but he steals the idea from Clarice and Crawford.
Absolutely, but all it does is benefit Hannibal Lecter.
How can you read that?
Yeah, those are chicken scratches on it.
This is my handwriting. I know how to read my handwriting.
I'm reading Jason's handwriting. It's great.
It's great. Yeah.
I know how to read my handwriting.
Of course you do. It's surprising.
Well, I'm sorry. I don't look like I'm out of grade school.
I stop the movie
with perfect penmanship.
I stop the movie and I write every detail.
How the hell do you write that legible quickly?
I don't know.
Can you actually do that quickly?
Yeah.
Because when I'm writing, I'm like, I gotta get this shit out. immediately.
Welcome to Note Seizure.
To do like 2 lines of what you read would take me like 10 minutes. To get it that
I wonder what the
legible.
How much you've written though that I try to remember from fewer words.
Well,
does that make sense?
I try to
like court reporter shit.
In some cases, I have a shorthand. In some cases, I don't. It
doesn't matter. You can read it. It's fine.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I can.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry I brought it up.
Anyway.
Next time on an episode of Note Seizure, we have
handwriting shaming over here.
We have notes about.
I'm not shaming you.
Jesus.
I'm marveling. That's
marveling. That's marveling. All right, Hannibal Lecter.
We just high-fived in the studio. Where were we besides chickens? Lambs?
Yeah, lambs. So yeah, we were talking about the
senator's daughter gets abducted. This is Bill's next girl.
So we assume his 7th victim.
I think, yeah. And we learn a little bit about his method, right?
Right. He watches them. He has night vision goggles.
Chekhov's night vision goggles.
Right, exactly. And he
because he doesn't really use them in the abduction at all.
No, he just uses them to watch. Well, no, because he has to be approachable. And, seeing somebody in night vision goggles, I'm not going to think they're going to be all that approachable if I'm a lady.
Bill would not be successful at this attempt today, probably. He'd get maced in the face. Nobody would go fucking near him.
Unless you knew him as your neighbor.
Yes, which I don't think is the case.
No, I don't think. I think this is where he starts to get a little bit impatient. She talks about him being patient earlier. He knew the person. He coveted what he could see and what he knew.
Right.
But here, he seems to be just taking a shot at somebody, not knowing who they are, except for that they lived alone.
Oh, he staked her out. I don't know.
Well, staked her out enough, but I don't think he doesn't seem to. It seemed as though he did the groundwork with the one girl in Ohio.
No. He knew her.
Right.
Personally.
That's what I'm saying. He did more with her.
No, because he knew her. She was his first victim.
I thought they were the 3rd victim.
No, she was the 4th one found.
Yeah.
But she was the first victim. I think
she was the first.
And the reason that he weighed her down, because he weighs her down, the reason he weighs her down is because she's the only one that he has a personal link to. And doesn't want her found.
Okay. I thought that she was the 3rd victim, not the first. Okay.
In regards to whether or not his ploy to get Brooke Smith into the van would work or not, there's kind of some underneath behind the scenes stuff at play here, because when Scott Glenn was cast as
Jack
Crawford, he actually met with John Douglas to prepare for the role, and John Douglas played him recordings of Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris, the notorious serial rapist killers.
Yeah.
That the recordings that they took when they were like torturing their victims. And those two were, when they were kind of preparing for their spree, they did a lot of practice with a van. They would pick up hitchhikers and use different methods to entice them to get into the van, and they would refine their approach.
Right.
So they would have it down to the point where okay, this is what we need to say and how to say it and what we need to use and what props. So it's not outside the realm that he had practiced this routine.
I believe that. And I'm talking about
and gotten people into his spiderweb that he let go.
I'm talking about the level of trust that people have today.
Fair.
Not in 1991 or 1970 when these guys were active. I don't know a girl personally that would go help that guy put the thing in today.
It's hard
There's
to
probably
say.
people.
It's hard to say.
It is hard to say.
Where it gets super sketch is when he's has her be the one who lifts into the van. It's oh, lady, no, that should be alarm bells everywhere. Right?
Yeah, so you should be no, you go ahead. I'll push it
ahead. Exactly.
And that's what I think things would go today. I hope to think.
I
guess it's more of a hope than anything.
Well, there are always going to be I mean, there's always going to be gullible people, and maybe he knew that she would be overly
That's
helpful.
what I'm saying. I'm sure he staked her out.
But yeah, it seems he is, I mean, at the very least, I do agree that he likely has passed done some checks with this.
For sure.
Who will be,
Yeah.
who would see a guy trying to lift a couch by himself with a broken hand?
Yeah, he's tried this before. He's probably perfected it. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hey, lucky him. She's size 14.
Yeah. You about a size 14?
No.
You're about a size 14. Oh yeah, is she a great big fat person?
She's a bigger woman. Yes.
She was
Bigger lady, yes.
She was a roomy girl. There is this movie, I feel like, is very, very human in a lot of ways, in ways that you wouldn't necessarily expect it to be. Like when she goes to that one girl, to the girl that he knew, to her family's house. That's kind of a heartbreaking scene.
Uh-huh.
The dad seems to be completely and totally lost at this point, kind of out of it.
Well, it's become so like, you're just another
person that wants to know facts and not really have any kind of idea who this person was.
He has no hope that anything's gonna come of it. He's just so disconnected,
right? And
from any hope.
The people who are going to talk to him about it aren't going to talk about her,
right?
They're going to talk about facts. They're not going to talk about the humanity side of it. And you see her scanning the room and looking around, and the pictures of her and the dad.
The first one to find those Polaroids, by the way. I guess she was one of the first people to investigate that, wasn't she?
Well, I mean,
she was one of the first victims.
You don't expect to take a section out of a music box.
I don't know about that. I think they would have torn her room apart. But nowadays they would.
Yeah, probably nowadays they would.
Looking for clues.
I mean,
that is a little bit.
That could be of its time where they, or it could be a situation where a lot of these victims are in small towns that don't have probably don't have the same level of detective.
Yeah.
That,
that's true too.
Philadelphia.
And frankly, honestly, it wasn't even that great of a clue.
No, it just
gave her a better sense of her body size.
It gave her an indication of the body size, and that somebody had to have taken those pictures.
Right. Yeah. Someone familiar to her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so she kind of puts together, it's like, oh, he's kind of, maybe he had to know her, or, and kind of appeal to the thing that she was working through with her roommate.
Right. And that also kind of connects to what Lecter says in his clues to her in the notes. Yeah.
And so, because it's like, isn't it desperately random?
Yeah.
Which means that he is trying to be random.
Right.
About where he places the bodies. But, but like, just scanning the room, seeing the pictures with her and her dad. And it's like, you start to see the human that was killed and not and that's one of the really good things about Clarice that really starts to shine through in this segment, because she goes and talks to her friend, and you see her she's really, really able to get people to tell her a lot of stuff. And she's really good at her job. Now, part of that is probably because at that time she's an anomaly. The woman isn't normally going to be the person who's going to come and talk to another woman about a crime. It's going to be some guy who, like in the past, just looking for facts about somebody. Very cold, very calculated what they're asking. But yet it seems like Clarice is having a conversation and letting the girl just kind of talk to her. And she's very approachable, which I think, again, shows what type of agent she's going to eventually become. And also kind of indicates like, she is for real deal. We're not wrong in our assessment of her up to this point.
Mm-hmm. Right. One thing I do want to note now, I kind of put Steph on the case earlier, and she said that the picture that Jack Crawford is holding was a composite sketch, and she believes it looks like Bill.
Yeah. Okay.
So I just, like, in looking at it, did not recognize him, to go back to that.
Gotcha. There's one other thing that Jodie Foster, I think, just delivers this line fantastically. When she goes to, so she gets a clue from Hannibal Lecter. Go check out this storage unit in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And she goes, and there's this little old man who's going to help her get in or give her the key. And that, it was all paid for 10 years in advance. Of course, we find out later it was Lecter's storage unit.
Right.
And so she goes and she can't get the door to go up. So she goes and gets the jack and she jacks it up and she starts to slide under it. And she's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, if this door should fall or anything else should happen." And it's just that one little line where she's like, kind of like cracking the joke that she might fucking die because the door is going to fall on her. But they call the people. They know I'm here with you. It's the little deliveries like that. That's like start to finish all the way through this movie.
That storage unit is like Mary Poppins' fucking carpet bag. It's huge. It is huge. Like you get inside there and there's like a car in there and that's just like 10% of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was paid for. The little guy is like, "Yeah, it's paid for 10 years." And the fact that he's got a driver that hates physical labor, but he looks like a big tough guy, also is just kind of funny. It's just a funny moment in the movie where it's like, oh, that guy could help, but he hates to do physical labor.
Which is interesting too. It shows foresight for Lecter again, because his plan gets kicked into effect 2 years earlier than he anticipated. That storage unit would have been discovered in 2 years, and it would have kicked off investigations that led back to him, and it would have probably helped him do this plan he's doing now with Starling.
Yep.
Like he hid the head in there on purpose, right?
Yeah.
With assuming they were going to find more bodies with the butterfly thing in the throat.
Yep.
Like that's not even talked about in the movie. But
yeah, that's true.
He's planning his escape.
Yep.
Before he even gets caught.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And, I mean, we do find out that, there is there was a thing in there, but yeah, you're right. It's like he already knew that this, cause he even called him fledgling, didn't he?
Yes.
That this fledgling killer from 8 years ago or whatever, 9 years ago, was going to become somebody.
Another happy accident this time for Hannibal Lecter.
Yep.
I don't know where we're on the movie. We've been jumping around a lot. But the scene where Hannibal escapes.
Yeah.
Like, should we get there? Are we not there yet?
We're we're covering everything. We may be a little out of order, but that's fine.
This is like this sequence, like when, do you have anything you want to say about when she goes back and they do the silence talk? Cause it's before the escape.
No.
Yeah. I mean, the title comes from the title does come from the fact that when her father died, she ended up getting sent to a farm that her aunt and uncle had, right? Aunt and uncle, I think it was.
No, she was placed in care because there was no other family.
But she did go to.
She didn't know the farmer. She kept calling him.
Oh,
the
okay.
farmer.
I'm sorry. The book, it's I think it's a
maybe.
And then she ends up at the home for the kids. But yeah, no. So she ends up there where they had they were slaughtering the spring lambs, and she would hear them crying at night, and she needed just to save one of them.
Yep.
Which is a little bit of extra motivation for why she does what she does, to save people, to save something.
Right.
So yeah, and so she takes off with the lamb, but yet that never appeased her. It never solved the screaming that she would hear.
No. She took off with the lamb, but the lamb was too heavy for her. So she had to put it down. The lamb was taken back and slaughtered. So she did not save the lamb.
Okay, yeah. And still
that's
to this
important,
day.
An important detail.
Yes, you're right. So at this point, she still can't escape hearing the screaming of the lambs at night.
Right. And Lecter is like, so you think if you save this girl, you will silence the lambs.
Yes.
Which, yeah, we
that
don't know.
That does play out in the book after she graduates and after she gets the call from Lecter. She goes to bed peacefully in the silence of the lambs with the bug guy that hit on her. They are dating by the end of the book.
Oh, yeah. I don't remember that.
But yeah, she does go to sleep with the silence of the lambs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that scene, talk about how effective this movie is. Like 30 years later, I watched it with my youngest. That, like, Lecter, I don't know, we don't need to talk about every single thing he does, but he basically traps the cops.
Yeah. Well, he took somebody's pen.
He took the pen of Chilton earlier in the movie. I don't know how the fuck he got it when he's in a straitjacket.
I don't know how he got it either, but at one point, it's such a throwaway. It's like Chilton goes to sign something, and he's like, and the other guy's like, "Here, use mine."
Yeah,
and then they just walk off, and it's like it just zooms in slowly on Lecter, and it's like, uh-oh. But yeah, he uses something from the pen to pick the lock.
Yep, to pick the lock. He locks one of the cops, which I guess they don't have guns. Did they not have guns? Like, one of them could have shot him.
One of them did have a gun. The other one was the guy who gets handcuffed. He's an old Russ Meyer guy. That's Charles Napier.
You're Russ Meyer, dude.
I think he gets beaten before he can get his gun. The other guy gets knocked out by the door. But anyway, he does get a gun.
Yes. He gets a gun. Yeah, you're right. He gets a gun from one of the cops. He fires some shots. He's very manipulative of the people he can't even see that are 6 floors below him.
Yeah. Because he's playing with the elevator.
The noises he's making, and he drops the elevator so he can throw himself onto the elevator. So eventually, basically what happens is he takes the skin off of one of the cops' face, puts it on his own, and lays like a dying cop.
Yeah.
And
he takes his clothes too. And he strings Charles Napier up like a butterfly.
Yeah, like a butterfly.
Yeah.
Which is
and
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when he gets taken out into the ambulance and he stands up and takes the skin of the other cop off, Brindley goes, "No!"
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I think that's the same reaction Clarice had.
Which is
that's awesome.
It speaks to the staying power of this film. Like, it still works in an age where kids have seen way more than this.
Yeah.
Like, when I first saw this movie, it's like I was her age. I was 14 years old when this came out.
Yep.
And I watched it on VHS, and I was astounded by it. And it still does that.
Well, you know what makes this a little extra scary as a horror movie? Is that it feels real. And a month after this came out, all the Jeffrey Dahmer stuff hit the news.
Oh, yeah. I didn't remember that.
Accelerated this movie's profits.
Yeah.
And probably propelled it to the Oscars. So, yeah, I mean, there's a reality to it that feels real, even with happy accidents that sometimes have to be written into a story to make things work. It still feels like a guy like Hannibal Lecter could be real.
Well, it helps that the Bill character is based on Ed Gein and John Wayne Gacy, like real people that people know about.
Yeah.
Like, that's important to the story, that people can go, oh, yeah. Somebody has done stuff like this before. But, yeah.
Yeah, it's and it's not a movie that, I mean, for a lack of a better way of saying this is not a movie that sniffs its own farts either. It's not trying to be, oh, aren't we smart by doing it? It just lets it happen.
Yeah.
It just, we're going to do it. This is our presentation, and either it's going to hit or it's not.
Well, let's get to the crux of it. We know that Crawford thinks he has the right guy.
Yeah.
We know that Clarice Starling is in the town that James Gumb is actually from. She's told by Crawford to go tie up this last loose end to make the connection for us.
Yeah.
While we go apprehend him at this other house. Well, it turns out that the house she's going to talk to an old lady is the mother of James Gum.
Yeah.
And he's been living there with the girl in his basement.
Yeah.
In the well. And I don't know, take it from there.
He gives her, he says that the person that she's looking for hasn't lived there in a long time, and he gives a different name. And she's like, oh, well, do you have the number for the people who used to? Yeah, come on in. And he's going to just play this off.
Right.
You know, and, you know, he looks for the number, but the death's head moth was what the chrysalis was that's been stuck in everybody's.
And she sees one flying
and she
around.
sees one that's gotten loose from the basement because so the girl in the well trapped his dog.
Precious.
And they're screaming at each other back and forth over it when she comes to the door, and he comes up to the basement and he doesn't shut the door, and that causes a moth to come up, and she notices it. And again, she has to, like, this is another one of those Jodie Foster moments where you see her having to have to think, oh my God, what do I do now?
Right.
This is it. This is the guy. And she decides to take him on herself, but she hesitated. And I think it tipped him off that I need to think about
She told him to freeze and he runs.
Right. But he's already, like, it's also set up that he's got a gun on the stove right next to where he.
I mean, that's been sitting there for.
Sure. But I mean, but like we see that so that we know that he has a weapon nearby, and she kind of hesitates to the point where while he's trying to give her the card to the, like, he knows something's up.
Right.
And so he takes off and he shuts off the power. So she follows him into the basement, and it's pitch black.
The scene is so good.
Yes. And we see through the night vision goggles.
Whatever that noise is.
And whatever that power sound is.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's kind of like, it's creepy too, because he's like almost touching her while she's completely and totally helpless. She can't see anything.
Right.
And so, like, we see him kind of playing with his prey a little bit.
Yeah, he gets overconfident, right?
Yep.
It's to his detriment.
Yeah, because when he could have just killed her,
well, she also represents something. I think he wants her hair.
Possibly
for his outfit.
Well, he can get her hair after he kills her.
I guess, but that's not the way he does things.
Yeah, he stops and he covets her.
You're right. He does covet her too.
Yeah. So he then decides to finally act, and by cocking the gun,
which he should have had cocked anyway.
He should have done it first.
That's another thing Brindley said is like, why isn't this gun already cocked? I'm like, why are you rooting for the bad guy?
Yeah, exactly. Why aren't you rooting for Jodie Foster?
Well, I mean, in fairness, though, he just grabbed it off the stove and ran.
Yeah.
And guns are probably not typically his thing.
Yeah, I mean, cocking it isn't necessarily a thing you immediately think to do until you want to use the gun.
Yeah.
Right?
Fair.
True. Because also, he's, even with the night vision, I mean, he could shoot himself real easy if he's not careful, I guess. I don't know. Either which way, he cocks the gun, she hears it, and knows to immediately spin around and just fire. And she empties her gun.
Yeah.
And she kills him. Yeah. She wins.
Yeah. And go ahead, Jason.
I don't know.
The only other really important thing to note, because it's the theme of the movie, at the end, there's a very pronounced Jack Crawford and Clarice Starling handshake.
Yeah.
Like she's
now his equal.
Yes. Which is,
I don't know if
bittersweet kind of like.
Yeah.
Well, it's
a mutual respect,
right? It's
not equal, but he's accepted her into his world.
Right.
Yeah.
You are one of us now, and you've earned it, and also you got the big guy that we've been looking for a long time.
Yeah.
Way to go, cadet.
Which is funny though, because in any other movie where the man, you'd still get that handshake, but it doesn't have the weight. Like the man who's earned it.
It would have been pulled back, and you would have seen him like manly handshake it.
Manly handshake, but even the accepting, it doesn't have that weight. Like there's a lot of weight in the handshake at the end of this.
I think it's the close up.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but
this is a good movie.
Yeah, she gets a call from Hannibal Lecter saying, I'm not going to come after you. And I'm going to go eat Chilton. Bye.
Yep.
And that's it. And it ends with Hannibal Lecter walking down a street in what I think is the Bahamas. I think it said in the credits they filmed a single scene in the Bahamas. Mm. And it stays on that street for the entirety of the... I love that. I love it when
the whole
it's a
credits.
Static shot for the whole credits.
Did you love it in Popeye too? Never mind.
But it does... I do find it interesting that it ends after the music. That there is a silence at the end.
Oh, yeah.
So... Yeah, so there, we do get a little bit of Clarice's Silence of the Lambs.
Right. Fair.
Yeah. But I love this movie.
It's real good.
It's really, really good. And it was one of those times where the Oscar went to the crowd pleaser. I don't think it was the odds-on favorite.
Which is wild. I mean, it's a horror film.
Yeah. It's the first horror film to win. The only.
It also, like,
wasn't the first to be nominated.
In my mind, it's part of the reason we have all of the True TV crime documentary shows. Like
it yeah. I mean, it captivated a lot of people. I mean, of course, again, the biggest serial killer of our time. The news broke just after this.
Yeah.
So that. Again, it's going to forever be intertwined with Jeffrey Dahmer in some way.
Yeah.
Unfairly. But, it happened, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
there's always a part of me that will always have a crush on Jodie Foster.
She's great.
I mean, those blue eyes are so like you focus on them when she's on, like, the way this is shot, you have to look at her in the eyes.
Yeah.
And it's great. I mean, you become so well acquainted with her. And
this movie's very eye focused.
Yeah.
And one other thing I did want to mention, I don't want to belabor this, but almost every shot, like, leading up to the end where Bill is doing his voyeuristic thing through the basement is also shot like someone is stalking Clarice.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
It's pretty on point stuff. I noticed it early. I'm like, the camera's not just following her. It's following her.
Yeah.
But, good stuff. Good stuff.
I wonder what the favorite was. This beat...
I think Prince of Tides was the favorite.
Yeah, beat Prince of Tides.
Or Bugsy.
JFK, Bugsy, and Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast was the surprise Best Picture because it was the first time an animated movie was nominated.
Boy, Gene Siskel had a bad 2-year run.
Yeah, he didn't like this.
He didn't like this or Unforgiven,
right.
The 2 Best Picture winners.
Both of those were reevaluated by Ebert. He put them in his great movies list.
Well, Ebert gave Silence a positive review.
Right, but it was mostly directly on Hopkins, I think. Mm. But then later, he completely and totally reevaluated. That's the one thing that, again, this movie was so... kind of came out at a time where you don't expect it to be a cultural, iconic movie.
No, it's not
a summer movie. It's not a holiday. Yeah, and it's like... It was this quiet little thriller.
I can't imagine anyone thought it would win Best Picture.
I mean, the popularity of it, I think it did get momentum. Obviously, it got momentum with the Academy.
But I mean, when it's made, when it
came out, nobody was saying, "Oh, a year from now, it's going to win Best Picture." No, it was. This is a good movie, and it's like I'm gonna rent it when it comes out on VHS in the summer or whatever. And but I mean,
it almost didn't get made. It was like Gene Hackman had to pass. He had the rights, and he had to pass on it for it to even get made.
How did Gene Hackman have the rights?
He bought the rights to the novel.
Smart.
And he was going to play Jack Crawford and possibly direct. Yeah.
Well, Demi's the right guy.
And then it was after the script got written and he read it, he kind of had a change of heart and dropped out. And then all the funding dropped out. So I had to refind funding. Also, Jodie Foster was like not even the third, fourth, or fifth pick to play the role.
I can't imagine anybody else playing that part. That's my biggest disappointment, and the thing I like the least about Hannibal is that it's Julianne Moore and not. It's like that's a completely different person.
Who? Yeah, well, yeah. I mean,
it's not. It's like the thing about Jodie Foster is that she is diminutive, and she seems to almost get bigger as the movie goes.
I'm like Foster has stuck to her guns on everything, right? Like I'm surprised Hopkins came back and played Lecter any number, like once, let alone 3 more times.
Yeah.
Like Foster was like, we fucking nailed it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way I feel. Like she was like, no, we're not gonna. You can't redo this.
Well, the other thing is Foster. Yeah,
money too, but she never seemed to care about that.
No,
either.
But Foster also like. Yeah, that's true.
I mean, also the other thing is like Hopkins could get power from it, right? Like it's like if I come on, I want, it's like he probably got back end, he probably got producer credits, he probably got all sorts.
She could have probably gotten it too.
She could have probably also, but like she's also somebody who I don't feel like she just would do stuff like that. Like
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I feel like she stuck to her guns. Like I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah, it's like.
But she also led to like generations of women who act just like her in these roles. Not just like her, but you know what I mean. Right. Like this kind of character is.
Well, she set the tone for what this type of character should be. And it's like why does she need to go back and potentially screw it up?
I think even what's her name who played Scully.
Oh yeah, Gillian Anderson.
Gillian Anderson, I think, said like I modeled the character after.
Yeah, of course she did.
Her.
Yeah.
So so the first choice was Michelle Pfeiffer, then Meg Ryan, then Laura Dern, which Laura Dern would have been good.
Meg
Laura
Ryan
Dern's like 6 feet tall,
playful.
True.
Meg Ryan has the look. If you
could have the look, but I don't think she would have the.
She's like playful. She's almost like
gravitas.
Yeah,
I hate saying that, but
I would have liked Dern in the sequel, but but they're so different physically,
right?
But Jodie Foster wanted the role from the start.
She beat Laura Dern for Best Actress that year. That's the funny thing.
For what?
She was in Rambling Rose.
Well, she wanted it from the start. The studio didn't think that she would fit the role after her Academy Award win for The Accused.
Right. Because, well, that tells you that they thought she was too sexy for it.
Could be.
Which is weird.
That is fucking weird. Because, yes, in The Accused, there is a point to be made that she was this kind of flirtatious person who did legitimately get raped. But, like, you're telling me now that you're reading the wrong fucking thing from that movie if you think that she's not right after that movie. That's fucking weird, man. Yeah. That is because I don't know if you've ever seen The Accused.
Don't like put words into his mouth. Don't like. It could have been for any number of reasons.
Well, it could have been, but like
maybe just like too high profile.
Possibly, maybe they were worried they couldn't afford her. That could be.
I mean, I just think like profile wise, like maybe you just
profiling doesn't work. We already learned that.
Yeah,
and I find it wild to me that Hopkins was said to have been intimidated by her,
which is amazing.
Isn't that wild?
Well, because I mean, like you've seen the little girl lives down the lane. Like it felt she was 13. It felt like she was intimidating Martin Sheen.
Yeah.
He was intimidated by her talent as well. Like the fact that she had just won the Academy Award a couple years before. He was just like kind of in awe of her like.
I mean, she's an excellent
professionalism.
She's an excellent actress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she really is.
Like, I don't think I've ever seen her in a movie I don't like her in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. There you go.
There it is.
We did it. What's next?
Well, we got another big time big time movie about some criminals.
Oh?
Oh, yeah, we do.
Another strong male female lead movie.
What is it?
Bonnie and Clyde.
Oh, yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, wasn't this nominated for the Big Five?
Yeah.
And it won none of them?
Yeah. A lot of movies get nominated for them.
Not a whole lot.
Not a whole lot, but movies do get nominated for
But
them.
this one is one of the few that was nominated for all 5 and won none of them.
Right.
Yeah.
And I should also mention real quick, because like Everything Everywhere All at Once was real close. It won 4 of them.
Yeah.
But of course, there wasn't
it wasn't
no Best
nominated for Best Actor.
Right. Was not nominated for Best Actor. Another one that was nominated for all 5 and won 2 of them was As Good as It Gets.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, like, it is important also to put into context that the Big Five is a big deal. However, Everything Everywhere All at Once won 7 of the top 9.
Yeah.
And that's insane.
Yeah, it's insane.
Because all it won were the top ones. And also, everything that the Big Five ever won, all 3 movies only won those 5.
Every award everywhere, all but 2.
Yeah, all but 2. Yeah. Right. That's right. In some multiverse, they won them all, I'm sure. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So, Bonnie and Clyde, Warren Beatty, Faye Dunaway, Elijah Cook is in there, isn't he? Yeah. So,
See the town drunk?
Some people argue this movie was the beginning of New Hollywood. So
Interesting.
we're going to talk about that.
We're going to talk about that. That's next Wednesday, the 17th of May. Come to filmseizure.com, check that out. You can also find out all the places you can follow us, where you can hear the show, so on and so forth. Also, same place, filmseizure.com. You can check out my show, Monster Mondays. This upcoming Monday is Food of the Gods, starring Marjo Gortner.
Yeah, Marjo.
Marjo!
I've never heard of that one.
It's an H.G. Wells adaptation.
Oh, okay.
About big, mostly rats.
About big
Big
fat
big
persons.
rats.
Big
old
fat
fat person.
Anyway. So that is coming up on Monday. Same place, filmseizure.com, do all that stuff. Then, this upcoming Friday, B-Movie Anima is celebrating Mother's Day with Mommy 2, Mommy's Day. Mommy's a really good movie. Mommy 2, not as good. But read my full review on that, bmovieanima.com. That is the 375th.
Good God.
I know, right? What do I do with my life?
Right. Articles?
Apparently.
Yeah.
No time for love, Dr. Jones.
We got it right now.
We got it right. Anyway, so, yeah. So check that out. And, yeah. Until next week, I am Jeff Arbuckle.
I'm Chuck Moore.
I'm Jason Oliver, and you have been listening to Film Seizure.